Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. Are you not entertained? No, we're not really. A weekend of 1-0 wins and 1-1 draws is best summed up by Manchester United v Arsenal being dominated by controversy of a defensive wall being a whole 1.2 yards further away than it should have been. Whatever will this season throw at us next? Thank God for Tottenham and Bournemouth providing some madness and lovely goals, but we'll also discuss Nottingham Forest, Erling Haaland, Aston Villa and loads more on what will be a very entertaining game podcast. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today we have the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd, the reporter and European football expert Tom Allnutt, and the former defender turned footballer Gregor Robertson is here as usual. Here we are then.
Former footballer turned footballer.
Former footballer turned footballer. Oh yeah, good point.
I'm making a return.
He's back. He's back.
Watching some of the dross this weekend, though, I thought, you never know.
You could do it. You could do it. See, we're having a laugh already. The three great entertainers are here. But yes, thank you for that, Alison. Good spot. But yeah, I'm excited for your career relaunch now. That's great. I believe in you. Anyway, as so often on a Monday this season, we head to Tottenham. And two of the great entertainers this season, Tom Allnutt, you were there. Great fun, wasn't it? You must say yes.
Yeah, I came into this room and I was sort of asked how the game was, and I sort of said, and I felt like I was being bullied by three people here telling me the game must be entertaining. You must say it was fantastic.
Well, only because I'd written that entire intro based on the premise that we were going to come to you at a 2-2 draw, and if you said it was crap, then we really were in trouble.
No, but this is interesting because we're being quite evangelistic about it. If you were there, was it different?
No.
On telly, it was fantastic.
It were right great. Why did you do a northern accent then?
No idea.
Why did you?
Yeah. Anyway, back to the football.
It was a good game. I think there was a good mix between, one of the best pressing teams in the league, Bournemouth, against Tottenham, who, are one of the most calamitous teams when it comes to playing out from the back at the moment. So you had a match that was, and Postecoglou said after the match, it was like a basketball match, and it was like that. It was end-to-end chances for both teams. I think Bournemouth will feel like they've missed a huge opportunity to win the game. They were 2-0 up, probably could have been 2 or 3 up after 10 minutes, and the win was there for them. Spurs were playing pretty terribly, I think, for the majority of the first half. The first couple of minutes was, I struggled to remember a worse opening 2 or 3 minutes, even the worst sort of opening 20 seconds.
There's that intro out the window now, for God's sake.
Romero's, gave the ball away after 18 seconds and gave it straight to Evan Nilsson, who should have scored. And it was a bit like that for the first kind of 10-15 minutes from Spurs.
I did think it said, though, everything about Tottenham, though, the nature of Romero's apology was the most casual thing, just a little hand up. Like, you'd literally nearly given him a Oh, sorry, lads. Like, it was a shocking error. Yeah. Shocking. There was no head in the hands. Greg is like, game's gone. No, never in my day. Would have been docked 3 weeks wedges for that one, wouldn't you?
It's not that unusual, I don't think, for Spurs to kind of have the ball on the edge of their area and give it to the opposition striker. That tends to happen quite a lot. They got better. Tottenham got sort of better in the second half. Bournemouth didn't put them away. And, 2 goals that I guess came sort of a bit out of nowhere for Spurs. The first one, a complete fluke, where Sarr bent it into the corner. It was clearly a cross. And then a penalty right at the end where Kepa, I think, should have done better, really. He made it so clear what he was going to do. And Son was pretty smart with winning it. And it was a penalty, and he put it away. And at the end of the game, I think you got 2 teams who Spurs will be relieved, I guess, that they didn't lose at home. It felt like at any moment the atmosphere in the ground could have turned quite sour. There's obviously pressure on Postecoglou. The big game of the week is not this match against Bournemouth, because ultimately Tottenham's league campaign is very much over. Their big game of the week is against AZ Alkmaar on Thursday, where they've got to come from 1-0 down to kind of stay in the Europa League. So this felt like a dress rehearsal for that. It was a very wobbly, nervous, anxious dress rehearsal. And for Bournemouth, they should have won the game. Really should have won the game. And I think if they'd won it, they would be right in the mix, wouldn't they, for that kind of top 4, top 5. And as it is, I think they've still got some ground to make up.
Just very quickly, I've got a lot of love for Sarr with that cross, because I think he's the first person ever to score a goal that could have started a cross-shot debate and then immediately end the debate straight away with his celebration. He was like, no need for the debate, lads. That was, I'm not even going to pretend. Not even going to pretend. Just mentioning the comebacks, the afternoon's comeback was the 26th different time that Tottenham have scored, been 2 goals down in a Premier League match and come back to salvage at least a point, which I'm actually surprised by. Only Manchester United have done so on more occasions in the history of the competition. 30. Anyway, just a little stat for you there, because I was really surprised.
How many of them have been under Ange?
I don't know.
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
That feels like it would be a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, even under Conte, they had that period, remember, where they were terrible in the first half and then good in the second half all the
that's true,
time,
yeah.
and they came back a lot. So it's been going on a while.
The great entertainers, exactly. It works. And we're not having a quick moment for the Kirkes cross.
Oh,
We
it was
great
a
goal.
good-
Yeah, it was
I mean, we
brilliant
can have
goal.
more than a quick moment, can't we?
I could watch that 100 times, I think.
Beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. And
That pace.
and I'm sure you will agree with this as a former left-footed defender. There is something about it being left-footed as opposed to right-footed
Oh,
that makes it
definitely agree
better,
with that,
isn't
yeah,
it?
Definitely.
Or is that just
Maybe.
me?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
no, you might be right.
even Trent Alexander-Arnold, who puts in beautiful crosses. If you think about that same cross from the right side with someone who's right-footed, it wouldn't look as nice.
Yeah.
I don't
agree,
know
Tom,
why.
I agree.
I don't know why.
I mean, that's true kind of in all sports, isn't it? I mean, like with a tennis,
Yeah.
you prefer a sort of left-handed serve.
I was cricket, left-handed
Cricket,
batsman,
left-hand
cover
spinner.
drive looks nicer. Don't know why.
It's rarer, isn't
Don't
it?
know why. See, all the big philosophical questions on the Game
I loved
podcast
when he was
today.
bombing down though, and you saw Iraola, like I think it was Semenyo or someone was going to make a run into the channel, and he was like, "No!" He was pushing them all. He's saying, "Just get in the box, get in the box."
Yeah.
He was like dissuading them from trying to link up or do anything silly, like any interplay or whatever. Just get the ball in the box. Everyone run for the box, and he'll whip it in, and what a cross and finish. That's Bournemouth.
In a
like,
nutshell. In a nutshell.
Get forward, the quickest route to goal. Run straight.
I like the way Kirkes runs as well. He runs like a little kind of mischievous, like a little schoolboy running out of the playground at the end of the day. Like, come on, yeah, we're going down the flank again. Off we go. It's really,
And
He
the
was
offside
good all
goal,
game, Kirkes.
the offside
Yeah.
goal was a thing of beauty as well.
Mm.
Like I think that was Tavernier, wasn't it? It's kind of little down. That was again down the left.
Yeah.
Just kind of little 1-2s through ball and just.
and the Clivert's assist, drop of the shoulder in that assist. Beautiful. We love Bournemouth, don't we?
We do love
Absolutely,
Bournemouth, but
absolutely.
for all the accolades, and I think even if Liverpool win a treble this season, you could still argue Andoni Iraola should be in the conversation for coach of the season, I think. I mean, so many people are thinking, big clubs are thinking, we wouldn't mind him. But he has an Achilles heel, and his Achilles heel is thinking that Kepa, because he's the most expensive goalkeeper in the world, is the best goalkeeper in the world. And I'm not sure he makes the top 50 goalkeepers in the world. And he let them down. He let them down.
He could be
in-
Chelsea's
against
best
Spurs.
goalkeeper, though, still. You
Possibly,
don't think so?
but they're
Yeah, we're not
they're
much in it,
probably
it's
number
true.
92 and 98. aren't they?
It's true.
Should have suggested that at the top of the show, Alison. We could have just done the whole 50 goalkeepers in the world. That would have.
There have been a few teams. I thought that watching it too. There are a few teams you think this season when they signed the goalkeepers, you thought, what are you doing? Like this is a mistake. I thought when Ipswich signed Muric as well. This is a massive, massive, massive mistake. Did you not watch last season? Like, and it's cost them so many points. Chelsea are another. The start of the season, you think this is not good enough. And when they sign Kepa, there's a hope that they can, rekindle some of the old magic, if probably from his time in Spain. But
The stark fact is he's not big enough to be a keeper, and he doesn't make up for it the way that Raya makes up for it by making lots of amazing decisions and reaction saves. He does lots of reckless stuff. I mean, giving away the penalty, it was... I can't think what he was doing. He had time to change his mind and realise, I'm going to take Son out here. Why would you carry on doing it?
Well, Son saw him coming in, and it was that thing where it was a penalty, but he drew the contact, didn't he? So just left his foot in. You could see Kepa coming and went down. I think Iraola said after the match that it was kind of the Kepa gave him the chance to win the penalty, and I think that was about right.
The thing obviously you talk about first with Bournemouth is like the way they press. And I read there were 38 pressures that led to a turnover, which is the 8th highest of any game this season against Spurs. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But the other thing is how many brilliant technicians they have in the team. Like, so many people who are just Christie again, who's someone who's really great at leading the press as well. But his little pass into Clivert, just kind of perfect weight, and Clivert just opened up and turned, and that had drawn out. I think it was Danso, and then he slipped in Evan Nielsen. It was just brilliant, perfectly executed stuff. And Evan Nielsen as well. Obviously, big misfortune having missed a lot of football with injury, but he's another one who's been a great signing.
Yeah.
And I think he will be even better.
Do we think that the normal question in previous seasons, before PSR and things, would be that this team would be completely ripped apart? Think of Southampton teams of old where Liverpool just sign all their players. Mm-hmm. Thinking of Kirkes, I mean, he's got to be one of the top players in terms of being sought after.
Kirkes and Huysen, I think there's even a bit of an acceptance at Bournemouth that
Really?
they'll do well to keep them both.
beyond the Cliverts and people like that? You think there's a world in which Iraola and this team could still be together?
I mean, Iraola is an interesting one because throughout his whole career, even when I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago when there was sort of talk about Iraola, and they were sort of saying, the thing is, you look at him throughout his career, he was at Athletic Bilbao for pretty much his whole career, had offers to go elsewhere but stayed there for sort of personal reasons, of course, but also because he felt a loyalty there and wanted to kind of develop his career there. He went to the States at the end of his career, even when he had offers from the Premier League, and he kind of kept to an agreement that he had to go to the States because he wanted to develop his coaching career there and learn English and learn about kind of the coaching methods of NFL and other things. Even at Rayo Vallecano, when he was being linked with Leeds, if you remember, there was a real kind of chase for him, and he said, "No, I'm going to stay until the end of my contract," which he did. He's a very sort of processed, methodical person. I don't think he's the kind of coach who will just leave on a whim, and I think he'll know what he's got here, that he's got a club where he is in charge, he can make the signings, he's now got the faith of the fans and the players. I hope that it doesn't come down to whether or not Bournemouth qualify for Europe, because
right.
I think if they do qualify for Europe, I suspect he'll be really tempted to do that and stay. If they don't, then I guess, there may be bigger offers for him. But I think people who assume that Iraola will just jump ship to the first club that come from the Big Six or whatever in the Premier League, I think it's slightly
about everything around the club and how well he'll be supported. I think I agree with that. I don't think he'll just.
He's got a very clear idea about where his coaching path goes. And if Spurs want him, I think they'll have to. I don't know. If Ange goes and Spurs want him, it'll have to be a good pitch. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned about Spurs going. You coming back to Tottenham just to finish this segment. It is a huge week for Ange Postecoglou, isn't it? All the conversations about winning trophies and things. That terrible first leg against Alkmaar. Do you think there's a potential, Tom, for if that second leg goes badly, that we could finally be asking the question: is Ange really in trouble now? I
think he'd be in trouble if they lose that game, because so much of Tottenham's season has been about when the injured players come back, and they're back. They are back now. I mean, okay, you can say that Kulusevski's out, Van der Ven and Romero are kind of still getting some sharpness and fitness, but ultimately most teams across Europe have 2 or 3 injuries, and that's where Tottenham are at now. And I think that was why that game against Alkmaar last week, I think it really rattled the club, actually, because there was a sort of 2 or 3 wins in the Premier League. Even the performance against City was quite good, and everyone sort of felt like there was a sort of tide turning, momentum building. I think losing that game and the way they played, I think was a really damaging defeat for Ange. And you could tell in the stadium yesterday that I don't think there's the same buy-in to Postecoglou as there was even 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think you can see in some of the players, not all, but I think in some of the players, there isn't quite the same all-out commitment to his way of playing. I think among the fans, you can tell that there's much more now a big chunk that are teetering on the edge of kind of faith in this project. I don't think it would take much now to kind of push it over the edge. And I'm sure the club are very reluctant to kind of go down the interim route, which they've done now, 2 or 3 times in the last few years, and it hasn't worked well. But as we all know, sometimes events overtake, and if they were to lose to AZ Alkmaar and then they play Fulham at the weekend, maybe then they decide actually that they don't have a choice but to change. I think you look at the way Spurs played yesterday, it was chaotic, it was calamitous. You didn't see much of the kind of Ange way of playing. You didn't see players who were full of confidence. And to me, it was such a striking comparison with Bournemouth, where you look at a load of players who are playing 2 or 3 above their ability. All across the team, you've got sort of 5 or 6 out of 10 players playing like 8 and 9s out of 10s, being linked with biggest clubs around Europe. There's evidence of good coaching, of players who are confident, who know their role, who know their position in the system. You look at Tottenham, you look down the team sheet and the squad, brilliant bench. They had Maddison, Udogie, Van der Ven all on the bench, really strong squad. And you're thinking they're underplaying, they're underperforming. This is not the team, that should be playing at the level where they should be at, and that comes down to the coach as well.
Interesting listening to you, because you've been one of the big kind of supporters, if maybe the wrong word, but has often batted back my suggestions on this podcast that, the end is nigh. The end is nigh. This is the first time we've heard.
It feels like faith's wavering, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right across the board. And I would agree, it does seem that way among the players as well. There's been a lot of damage done in the last, 4 or 5 months. Like, belief among the players in what they're being told to do doesn't look like it's there. Not like it was at the outset. So
it's the emperor's new clothes, isn't it? Everyone bought into this coach who had this strong philosophy, which was an entertaining one and slightly barking most of the time. But now that that's gone, you're left looking at him looking cross on the touchline. You think, well, what's he giving them? Like you say, he's making them less than the sum of their parts. They're not even entertaining anymore.
There we go. An entertaining game, and Ange Postecoglou's on his way out. There's loads to talk about. Here's what I didn't think that this was coming.
I mean, I was going to say, let's see. I mean, it's
no, you can't go back on it now.
It's still possible that Tottenham have a great game. They go through on last 16. They're into the quarterfinals of the Europa League. They got their players back. There is still a narrow path to making something of this season. But I just think it is a very narrow one.
Yeah, a huge week. Another huge week for Ange Postecoglou, but a great performance, largely from Bournemouth, although we'll be disappointed not to win that game. Just wanted to finish with another lovely story coming out of Bournemouth. Alison Rudd, your interview with David Brooks from the weekend. Tell us a little bit about meeting him and his remarkable story.
It is a remarkable story, and I felt quite privileged to meet him and for him to talk so openly, and he was so relaxed about talking about it, because if you think about it, if you've been through cancer, he was diagnosed 3.5 years ago with stage 2 Hodgkin lymphoma, and he had to have intense chemotherapy and missed a year of football with poison, as he put it, with poison running through his body, and then he got injured. He got injured because you can imagine this, can't you? You get the all clear, a year of treatment. They say you're out of your system, and you think, oh, I want to be a footballer again. And but he's nowhere near ready to be a footballer, because he's been having chemotherapy and he's not been training, and he's ballooned in weight because of the steroids he was on. But I want to be a professional footballer again. And so he tries too hard, and in a under-23 prep game, he gets a hamstring injury simply because he's putting too much weight on his system, because he's a little porky after all his treatment. And so he ends up missing 2 years of football. And you think, in your mid-20s, that's so hard, and you've got to grapple with questions about, will I get through this, and your family are worried about you and so on. But he's come through it with a degree of, he's still really ambitious. And so when Areola came, he said, well, you don't seem to be using me too much. I want to go somewhere and prove, almost prove post-cancer I can play 90 minutes and be a useful midfielder. And so he went to Southampton, where he had a great time. He had a fantastic time, and it was a bit unlucky that he got injured during the first half of their playoff final to win their place back in the Premier League. But he loved it there, and Bournemouth obviously keeping track of him and said, okay, we want you back, we want you to stay. And he's had to fight for his place again, and he's only really shone in games where Bournemouth have had their injury crisis, and he knows that. But when he's been asked to start, he's done well. Really well. He was part of that 4-1 defeat of Newcastle and integral to that. But in the midst of, they couldn't really choose anyone but him. But anyway, it's fine. But I think what I liked most about him was that, he's still only 27, but the way he spoke about perspective, and he now realises what a privilege it is to be a footballer, whereas I don't think you get that perspective before something bad happens to you. Yeah. And he spoke, he wasn't just saying the words, he meant it. You could tell he meant it. I felt he was telling me he's a different person now. Still ambitious, still wants to be a footballer, but it just means more, and he treats it as a proper gift in life to be able to be a Premier League footballer. And it was really lovely. But also, there's those sliding doors moments that he was feeling really ill because he had cancer, but he didn't know he had cancer. So he wasn't training very well, and his stats from training were rubbish. And so Scott Parker, who was the manager then, said, why are you not running very fast? And he thought, I must have fallen out of love with football. Not, I might have cancer. I must have fallen out of love with football. And his teammates are saying, then he got dropped, and his teammates are saying, well, you must be gutted to be dropped. You're saying, oh, not really, don't care. I think I've fallen out of love with football. Wow. And you think, oh, and then, so he's still feeling ill, can't sleep, very tired, losing weight, can't run very fast. He could very easily have said, oh, I'm not going to go on international duty because I'm not well. That's what people do, isn't it? Especially for Wales. They say, oh, I can't, I'm not well. And but he went twice. He went once, hurt his knee, They concentrated his knee. 2 weeks later, there was another international break. Even though he was feeling rubbish, he went back. And if he hadn't gone back, the doctor at Wales wouldn't have said, hang on a minute, all those symptoms sound like you should be in hospital tomorrow, mate. And he got his cancer diagnosis straight away. If he hadn't gone on international duty, which he had every right not to, and told people at Bournemouth, I think I've fallen out of love with football, that stage 2 would have become stage 3. That stage 3 would then become stage 4, and he might not be with us. So it's like, scary, all these things that might or might not have happened. But he's fit and he's healthy, and he's really happy when he gets the minutes with the club.
Yeah. It's a lovely, lovely interview. If you search for Alison's name and David Brooks, you'll find it on the Times website. Some much needed perspective in the mad world of football. Speaking of losing perspective, let's talk about a wall that was 11.2 yards away. Gregor, as a former defender, can I just say that when I saw this story coming out of the Manchester United-Arsenal draw, as a man who has been and sat next to Richard Clarke at many Football League games with my dad shouting, "That's not 10 yards." I'm delighted that we finally got around to a wall being too far away.
Do you know what came into my head?
We've completed football, haven't we?
My head was thinking, there's going to be a technological advance that's going to solve this, and there's going to be lasers
Wall
beamed
VAR.
onto the pitch.
Wall VAR.
That was the wormhole I went down in my mind. I thought, what is this going to spawn?
It's great, isn't it? I'm being serious. I mean, I know, Arsenal might be frustrated or whatever, but I was like, it's great. They're never far enough away. No, but that's also the training, isn't it? As a footballer, you get marched out and the line goes down and you try and sneak a few yards forward. They're just not doing their jobs properly. If they'd done the little waddle forward, it would have been 10 yards and it would have all been
What
fine.
was funny as well is that in the second half, clearly this information had been passed on, and, and the Man United players were like pointing to the mark on the ground when there was another free kick, and like proper arguing for every little millimetre. So yeah, that is usually the way, but an unusual way for an unusual controversy in that goal.
The normal thing is the player, you have the little shuffle, but then the real protest is when the player does his own march, isn't it? They sort of do their own march where they start counting and then telling the ref, and then the ref gives them a yellow card.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But none of this happened.
No.
There was no.
That's what I mean. We've never had this before.
No.
It was amazing. We've completed football lives. We don't need to carry on. But Bruno Fernandes scoring another free kick just a few weeks after I rifled off that stat from Bill Edgar about 47 shots from free kicks without scoring. Then he got one against Everton and now another one. Carlos, who's a listener, got in touch on Twitter to say he was shocked that I didn't mention it the last time. So I thought I'd better mention it this time, otherwise Carlos will be back on again. Other than the wall controversy, this is, another example of Arsenal and their season, isn't it? Huge win in the week in the Champions League against, admittedly, a poor PSV side, Gregor, as we were discussing on Thursday. But going to Manchester United, who have been struggling all season, and they've drawn again against a team they should be beating, even without a striker. Do we think that's fair?
Yeah, I think PSV basically played the way that Arsenal would really want an opponent to play against them. And Man United played the way that I think increasingly opponents are realising you can play against Arsenal and have quite a lot of success. We've seen against 3 or 4, 5, 6 teams this season who have played this, low block, let Arsenal have the ball, they'll play, what Johnny Northcroft said in his piece the weekend, the kind of horseshoe football, goes down the left, comes back, recycles, out to the right, comes back. And, the opposition just sit in and say, well, come and break us down. And Arsenal just... I know there's so much focus about the striker, and that is clearly a real problem. Mikel Merino is not a centre forward, and you can see that. But I also think that there's just a lack of creativity generally, in this team. And you look at the way Odegaard's been playing in recent months, nowhere near his, very brilliant best. Obviously, there are injuries with Saka and Martinelli, and others who have been out for a long time. But they don't have that zip. I don't think they're playing quickly enough. They're not. Everything is too ponderous. Everything is too safe. Everything's too cautious. And I think Amorim, robotic. Yeah, we talked a lot about Amorim, having his own style and not adapting. But I actually think he was pragmatic in this match. He said, "This is how we can play because we know this is how Arsenal struggle." They did it. They carried out the plan. And it was the same we've seen so many times before with Arsenal. Unable
and
to
United
break a team
could have
down.
won were it not for David Raya with those saves at the end.
And Gabriel's block.
Yeah.
What a block that was from Højlund. Felt sorry for Højlund actually because
he was like, finally, here we go.
He shinned it wide or whatever. He saw the replay.
Cross into the 6-yard area. I've made my run. Here we go. 2-1. Oh no, absolute nightmare. Alison, as chairwoman of the Martin Odegaard fan club, how do you feel about Tom's evisceration of his performances of late?
I I thought he had technically a very good game against.
Technically.
Yes, technically. Okay, I see what you're getting at. No, he's still a joy to watch because of his control and vision and so on. But his double act is with Saka, and that's missing. So one without the other isn't as great as the two of them together. And
even Ben White actually at right back. They have a nice little trio there, don't they?
Yeah. So he's missing a wavelength player, perhaps. You can't. I was once asked to win a football match on my own, and I know you can't.
What about Bruno Fernandes, though? Because he's literally keeping Manchester United afloat on his own.
Isn't it interesting, though? But I know so many United fans who can't stand him. It's
yes,
really weird.
I'm going the other way on Bruno Fernandes now. I feel sorry for the guy. I mean, I know he moans, but so does everyone else. And I know he kind of has a go at the referee, but he's the captain. He cajoles them. I think there are fewer players this good in this bad a team at that size of a club that I can think of, really.
No,
the combination of all those
they'd
things.
be in the relegation zone if it wasn't for his existence, and yet, for some reason, United fans don't appreciate. Some United fans don't appreciate.
No, I agree. I know plenty of United fans who don't
Strange,
appreciate
isn't it?
him. It's very odd.
I mean, it was extraordinary that they went in at 1-0 ahead at half time. They were woeful. Like, I totally take what Tom was saying and what Amram said about we aspire to do more than this. But like, when's that going to happen? How many transfer windows? How many players do you need to sign before you can start to like play any sort of sign of any sort of adventurous football or possession-based football? They just, and they did frustrate Arsenal, and they did kind of they were just really compact. They defended the box. So it was like watching Arsenal in late era Wenger, where they sort of just so much tippy-tappy football around the box, but none of the sort of, as Tom's saying, speed and like a little bit of guile where there's little gives and goes or a little back heel or something that just opens up a pocket of space. None of that at all. So Man United were totally within the rights to play like that, but you can see why he's like almost like running this campaign to say, look guys, just to be clear, this is not how it's always going to be. He has to you can see why he's saying this, because it's bad.
Yeah. But that's also maybe also part of a lot of previous Manchester United managers' downfall, is where they maybe got a decent tactic that worked of like smash and grab, sit in and then break, but then couldn't break down teams who sat in against them. And he's going, no, don't worry, this isn't my only plan.
It's jarring though. You watch them for the whole first half, just sitting off and letting the opposition have the ball at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
And offering nothing, just really playing long balls to like a pretty dejected looking Xerxes. And yeah, as I say, they went in 1-0. You're like, how the hell did that happen? And they improved in the second half, and it did become a bit wilder as Arsenal tried to do a bit more to get back in the game, and they could have won it. But that first half, I just thought, what are we watching here?
But if they'd taken Arsenal on at their own game, they would have lost the game, wouldn't they?
I agree.
That's the PSV conundrum, isn't it?
I agree.
Like Tom
I
said.
agree. I see there's complete logic in it, but it's still jarring.
Both things can be true.
Both things can be true.
There it is. Ding! The Gregor Robertson catchphrase to end the first half
But
of
it just
the show.
is interesting that he feels the need to run this little sort of campaign now.
Yeah.
Saying, guys, it's not always going to be like this.
Yeah,
I aspire to more
Listen,
than this.
let's not slag off Ruben Amorim, the back page quotes machine that he is. As we were saying, not a great game, and kind of does raise the prospect of the question, what is the greatest game that you could have in the prime time 4 p.m. Sunday slot, which we're going to come to in part 2, so you've got some time to think about it, ladies and gents, but it means we're going to take a break, and I'm going to ask the quiz question. Who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who holds the joint record for having been relegated from the Premier League with 5 teams and was a defender for Crystal Palace, Wimbledon, Ipswich, Charlton and Portsmouth? Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark, and I've got Alison Rudd, Gregor Robertson and Tom Allnut with me. They might know loads and loads about football, but when it comes to the quiz question, they were useless this week. Thank God we had producer Neil sat in the corner who chimed in with the answer, which was Herman Hreidarsson. Herman Hreidarsson. And I bet you also don't know who he shares the record with for 5 relegations. Nathan Blake. There you go. Nathan Blake. There you go, listeners. There's your pub quiz question for this week to impress
Gone
your
up
mates.
a notch in level of difficulty there, Tom.
Yeah,
which I'm okay with.
I just thought I'd keep you on your toes. You know, I
I don't think we can cope
It's
if
still
the
Mark
answer
Hughes
isn't
for
Mark
3
Hughes.
weeks in a
yeah.
row.
Yeah, I know. I knew you'd bring that up again, for God's sake. Maybe I'll try and get Mark Hughes to come on at the end of the season to deliver the question. See if I can get him to do a voice note. Might depend on how he's getting on with Carlisle. Anyway, let's get back to the Premier League and start talking about those thrilling, engrossing 1-0 wins at the weekend. And Gregor Robertson, you were at the City Ground to watch Nottingham Forest beat Manchester City. Prove all those doubters, some of those listeners who've been getting in touch with me to give you pelters to say, no, Gregor's wrong, Forest are going to dip, they're going to dip. They're back to their 1-0 winning ways.
Yeah, it was a very Forest performance. They just don't press. They don't, until the team sort of enter your third even, sometimes.
Danger zone.
Certainly your half. They just don't engage. And City, for a large swathes of the first half, were just passing the ball around at the back. And everyone was like, are you going to do something? You're like, this is boring everyone to tears. Forest were happy with it. And again, absolute logic in it. And it worked. And this is Forest's way. And they're always a threat on the break. But, and then sort of as the second half developed, Forest began to build some momentum. And they looked by far the more dangerous and threatening side. And Hudson-Odoi came up with the decisive moment. Had another great kind of, it's almost a Hudson-Odoi trademark now, you know, when he comes in from the left, skips past inside a few defenders and then aims one for the far corner, and Ederson made a brilliant save to tip it onto the post, and then he wasn't quite so good with Hudson-Odoi's finish, letting one in at his near post. As I say, like, this wasn't a brilliant game. It wasn't hugely entertaining until like the last half an hour when Forest took the lead, and the atmosphere was incredible in the last 20 minutes, absolutely bouncing, and it was seismic. You know, this is a huge win for Forest to open up the gap. This is the kind of the day that you felt they're probably going to make the Champions League. Like, there's 10 games to go. They've got quite a favourable run in. They've got Ipswich next. I think they're going to do it. I think that was the feeling in the stadium, and the noise and the colour and the sound and everything just reflected that. It was brilliant. But it was just a really effective win. It wasn't a basketball game by any means. It was
listening to you talk there about the way Forest won't engage until they're ready to. Do you think there's? I mean, I think they really reflect the personality of their manager. If you went for a dinner party,
refreshing.
If you went to a dinner party with Nuno, he wouldn't do chit chat. I mean,
have you seen his programme notes?
They're
hilarious. There's like maybe 3 sentences. It's just
yes, you're right.
It's like, welcome to the opposition. Thanks for your support. You know, you Reds. It's like, honestly, short. It's like, I was sitting beside Johnny and we were just laughing about it.
You wouldn't invite him to a dinner party where you needed people who were chatty. You wouldn't. I mean, his post-match is often very monosyllabic, and he doesn't do that charm offensive thing at all.
No.
But
he can be good when he warms up.
Exactly. So the team reflects him.
No, again, this is no criticism at all of Forest. They've been magnificent, and they're so well organised, and they close space, and City couldn't really find. They had a couple of half opens when the little cutbacks that they skied over the bar and stuff. The criticism is of City. Like, they just had no wit, no.
Just before we get to City, though, I'm just interested listening to you talk about that and thinking about Champions League and kind of linked to Bournemouth as well. Can they do it again? If I know I'm doing the classic podcast host thing of talking about things in way in the future. Let's just enjoy now. We're going to get Champions League, but it does kind of beg the question. You're talking there about City. Well, we know what Forest are going to do. Can they do it? Can they keep this going? Or it's just, I'm wondering about the one season wonder type effect. How do you take what they've got, which is brilliant, and adapt it for next season when if they're going to have Europe, which almost certainly looks like they will in some form, and teams know exactly what you're going to do? Can you just keep doing it?
I mean, you can. That's a big question, and it's one that probably we can leave till they've actually done it.
No, answer it. Come on.
I mean, yeah, look, there's huge. It's the same for any of these teams, like Bournemouth or anyone who, if they make Europe, the pressures on the squad and on the team and the workload and everything just is transformative. It makes everything so much harder. But one thing you've got to say is the way Forest play is a lot of it is conserving energy and moments where they kind of burst forward and are a real threat. So that'll always be the case. But I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because, as I say, they just don't play the other team's game. Yeah. They just City probe and they knock it into Nico in the middle and try and find. They could not find anyone in those little pockets of space centrally that De Bruyne in his prime has been so dangerous in, or Foden can be. They just could not find any space in there at all. So they kept funneling it wide to Doku or out to Savinho. Ina's one of the best 1v1 defenders in the league. I would put Tyrant Mitchell number 1 and Ina a close second. I think for that skill of just a 1v1 duel against a winger, they're absolutely outstanding. And Doku didn't get a sniff. If he went past them maybe once in the game, there wasn't wasn't a final ball. And Nico Williams was almost as good on the other side against Savinho. So they just backed themselves to do that. They funneled the ball wide and gave them no joy whatsoever centrally. So, what's the answer to that? City couldn't find one.
Yeah, maybe they can keep going. Tom?
I don't know. I think it's difficult. I mean, I just think if you look at history, like when you have these teams, these breakout teams, and I don't think there are going to be many better seasons in the Premier League than Forest. I mean, you look back and you put this right up there with Leicester winning the league, Everton, I guess, getting the top 4 once or twice a day, but I mean, it's hard to remember a season as good as this from Forest. The problem they'll have, I think, is one, keeping the players, because there will probably be 2 or 3 players who will be wanted by bigger inverted commas clubs. And I think the other thing is teams start to work you out. That is the thing. And I agree that we've seen Forest so many times play against opponents this season where they just don't know what to do against them because they don't want the ball, they don't want to play the game, and it works. I just wonder next season. I think other teams start finding solutions, and the thing that they'll have to do is if they do qualify for the Champions League is buy really well, to use that money and to use the kudos to kind of update the squad again. The problem you have, I think, is that clubs who want to sign those better quality players, they can pay bigger wages because they know we're going to be in the Champions League for 2 or 3 years in a row. Whereas Forest, they can't say that. Financially, they can't say we're going to be in the Champions League 2 or 3 years. So therefore, we can spend 60 million, 70 million. We can pay that kind of wages to get that type of player. So they're still going to be shopping in a market which is more of a mid-table kind of market, and they have to find more of these bargains, which they've already done. So I think it's hard. I think it's hard to repeat.
They should be shopping in that market. I think Marinakis will try and shop in the best market. Look, they tried to sign Cunha in January.
Yeah.
I think he will push it to the very outer limits of spending rules again, and possibly possibly slightly
take
too
that
far
points
again.
deduction.
They will. The ambition is there. Look, they've just brought in Edu from Arsenal to oversee the whole the whole football group.
But it's hard to persuade those players, right? I mean, Cunha didn't go, and it's hard to persuade those players to join the Forest thing and to say to them, we're going to get there again and finish second and keep going. That's a hard sell.
And there's been not many people who are more critical of Forest madness since they were promoted and the scattergun approach and how many players they signed. But they've changed it. They have. I think Ross Wilson deserves a lot of credit for calming everyone around him down and saying, we need to, and possibly the points deduction also was brought them back down to earth a little bit. We can't go mad here. But the 3 players who could well be selected by Thomas Tuchel have all been really smart for different reasons and very cost effective signings. Gibbs White his fee could rise to 42.5 million. When he was signed, when he just won promotion, everyone was like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You remember, the Forest fans thought that. He didn't go off to a great start, and there was a bit of stick in he was getting a bit of stick in the crowd. He's one of the most exciting players in the league now. Elliot Anderson was really opportunistic, very modern, profit and sustainability regulations at Newcastle.
Yeah,
they had to sell him.
Didn't want to sell him, did they? No.
Forest were first. They did it quickly. They got him 35 million. I think he could. I was sitting beside Johnny and we were saying, who's playing alongside Declan Rice for England in the next 2 games?
Yeah.
And that's not an easy question to answer. And you look at Elliot Anderson, and he's so multi-talented. He can play number 10. He can play 6. He can play 8. He can even play off the left. He's not going to for England, but I think he should be in that conversation, definitely. And then there's Hudson-Odoi. He was £3 million, and as I wrote about in the game today, it's not that long ago. The Bayern bid 70 million for him.
Yeah.
A lot happened after that, but there's a real player there. And again, they were the ones. I think Fulham were trying to sign him, and they probably blew them out the water with money because Marinakis is ambitious. But he's someone as well who's getting the game time and is showing. He just turned 24 in November.
Yeah.
He's still a lot of football in him. So these guys could be England internationals. And as I say, I've been very critical of them, but they deserve credit now because there are more of these success stories. Aina was a free transfer. Maria was 8 million.
Yeah.
There's a lot of success stories now. So if they can keep
Milenkovic as well, I think everyone would have as one of the signings of the season.
You can keep boxing clever like that.
In terms of spreading their net and trying to attract players, Tom, I mean, they have the advantage of having a history and a pedigree and being a big club once upon a time. It's not like if you were, say, Bournemouth and Forest both qualify for the Champions League, which is not impossible. If you were casting your net for players to come and you were weighing it up as a young player, Forest have the better PowerPoint presentation when it comes to what sort of club they are, and they're having won the biggest trophies in Europe and having an amazing stadium.
They have the history and the pedigree and the size. Not quite as big a club as Villa, but they have that to call upon and say we're trying to bring this club back to that. Yeah. So look, it's always hard. We know this. Well, there's been countless examples of teams who trying to break into that top. Villa are one of them. Newcastle, like with bigger resources, it's hard to sustain it. So who knows what the future holds, but they're enjoying the ride.
Absolutely. Lots of positives for Nottingham Forest. And as you mentioned, Gregor, Thomas Tuchel naming his first England squad at the end of this week. So we'll see if the likes of Colin Hudson-Odoi and Elliot Anderson can make it. Now, I think, guys, this might be the ultimate insult to Manchester City's season, that segment, because they lost a game against Nottingham Forest. Man City, lost to Nottingham Forest. And we barely even want to talk about them. Who cares? Boring. Like, just all talk about Nottingham Forest. Normally, that segment would go, oh my God, Man City have lost. And we'd do 10 minutes about Man City. And then I would go, quick, we have to mention Nottingham Forest. They were really good, weren't they, Gregor? And we've done it the other way around. The ultimate insult to Pep Guardiola. But Gregor, you wanted to mention Erling Haaland, because you said earlier before we started recording this show, that you were sat there thinking, I don't know what he's doing. It got the Gregor Robertson exhale treatment.
No, obviously Tony's written about him Tony Castle's written about him in the game today and saying that he's basically redundant. And there were moments in the second half of this game. There was one moment where I actually leaned back and went, "Oh, Erling," and I sort of caught myself. Hang on, what are you doing? But you just think,
is this in line with your return to action that you're thinking I could die?
No. But you just watch the game going on around him and think, like, what? There's just so many bodies around him. As I say, Forest just pack the centre of the pitch around the box, and like he doesn't even look like there's any point in making a run for, like, in case a cross comes into the box. I agree with Caston. It's been a debate for a long time. It's been rolling, and you think he can't be happy. He can't be. He just can't be. I know if he's scoring goals and he's contributing and the team's successful, that's going to ease a lot of those kind of those worries or whatever about your involvement in the game. But he can't be happy. He cannot be happy with that level of involvement, and the goals aren't really flowing, and City aren't successful. Like, that can't go on. And we're not, we're not expected to go on forever. But
we are going on forever. It's a 9-year contract, for goodness sake.
His position in Manchester City's team is just really peculiar to watch. It is.
Do you think Pep Guardiola can work out the solution to this conundrum, Tom? His own conundrum,
Haaland specifically,
and Haaland and City, and build this bright new future? Because as Johnny Northcroft said a few weeks ago, I think was very interesting, talking about it's Haaland's team now. Once you give him a 9-year contract, that's the theory, that it's Haaland's team going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Haaland is that you kind of look at him pre-City, and the goals he scored were not like the goals he's trying to score now, right? At the moment, because he used to love sort of space to run into and explosive, exactly. Whereas now he's kind of playing as a sort of penalty box predator, looking for scraps, and I'm not really sure that is his game. I mean, what Pep has done over his career is he's always adapted, and he's been able to tweak his own sort of philosophy and way of playing to the opponents around him. I think he's going to have to do that again, because I think he will probably recognise that his style of football that has been so successful over the last few years, at the moment, isn't working as well as it used to. Against these teams who are much quicker, much better in transitions, and who soak up this pressure. And it's kind of what Arteta is finding as well. The robotic football, I think, has almost been found out, and what Guardiola has done before is he is not too proud to say, okay, we have to evolve, we have to move on, and we have to bring in players who can do something different. I would imagine that City will, go big in the summer, and they'll bring in players who can do something like that next season. So I still think City will come back strong, to be honest, next year, because I think they'll have a better squad, they'll have a bigger squad as well. I think he's recognised Guardiola, who's always liked a small, tight-knit group. I think he realises that in the current climate you need a bigger squad as well, much more options to kind of deal with all the competitions. if he's got the energy and he's got the impetus to go again, which I'm really surprised he does, to be honest, then I don't think he can write City off next season.
No, we won't write him off just yet. But it is interesting that Erling Haaland has even got the Gregor Robertson treatment of, Erling, what can you do? The ultimate criticism for Erling
It's more
Haaland.
feeling sorry for him, actually.
You feel sorry for him?
It sounds strange when he's got a 10-year contract on $500 million a week or whatever.
Yeah. I changed my mind, Alison. That's the biggest insult to Manchester City this season. Let's go and look at another 1-0 game. Brentford against Aston Villa. A win for Villa, which means they end their 7-game winless run in the Premier League after playing in Europe in the midweek. So far this season, they've drawn 3 and lost 4 after playing in Europe. Back to winning ways, back-to-back winning ways. Alison, what did you make of this game? Another thriller?
It wasn't. The second half was quite good fun. Actually, it wasn't too bad.
Gushing,
going over the top there slightly. No, it was a slightly odd game given that stat. I would have expected Brentford to really harry and go at Villa because the stats show they're always knackered after Europe, aren't they? And we've been talking a lot about how clubs might fare when they're juggling Europe when they're not used to, and keeping tabs in the Premier League, and Villa have shown they're not quite at it. They are. It is a juggling act. They're doing okay. They're probably doing slightly better than a lot of people thought, but it's clearly taking a lot out of them. But if you know that, I'd have thought Brentford might have tried to expose that, capitalise on that, and they were quite passive. They defended quite well, but defended very well actually to start with, but. They were quite passive, and Brentford only woke up when Villa were denied a second goal quite soon after Watkins had given them the lead, and that reprieve suddenly changed everything, and it was all Brentford virtually, apart from the odd break from Villa, and Brentford looked like the team I have come to love. They were good fun, and they hit the post and came close and would have deserved a draw.
Should have had a penalty or penalties?
And that's the thing. They should have had 2 penalties, I think. I've seen quite a lot of Thomas Frank. I have never seen him look so A, ill, and B, angry. I mean, he was fuming, monosyllabic and cross, and just not himself at all.
The first one was strange, wasn't it?
Because he was given. He asked why there was no penalty given against Disassi, who literally just
he took out Cash.
But
then subsequently took out Shada.
Like dominoes.
He kept him through his own player.
It was a very poor challenge, and also slightly odd because there was another Villa player in the middle of it, sandwiched, and the VAR review came back because they give you a reason, and the VAR review said, it wasn't a penalty because Cash had managed to head the ball, which I mean, I've done refereeing. That's not a thing. So what? He still took him out.
Yeah.
I don't get it at all. I initially assumed the ball must have gone out of play by the time everyone was clattered over, but that's the replay showed that wasn't the case. So it's like VAR officials are making up rules that don't exist. So that was a clear penalty Brentford denied. And given how good Mbomo is at taking penalties, you knew we would have scored. And then Disassi again was involved. Shoving over Shada again, and but this, I mean, Frank said maybe it was 50-50. It was probably a penalty, but in this season where you don't overturn things, it wasn't so obviously a gaff to get overturned. So I can see why he was cross. But the fun thing from Villa's point of view, I mean, Emery always looks absolutely exhausted after every game. This season is taking it out of him. Listening to him speak, it was as if he had kicked every ball, and it was quite the trial for him, and he was so relieved they'd finally managed to break that run of not being able to win after playing in Europe, and he felt it was incredibly important. But a lot of the so they clearly a team that needs energising after they've played in the Champions League, and Axel Disassi gave them that energy. But he's a very strange player, I think, because he had a lot of calamitous performances for Chelsea, although I think he had the possibility of becoming a fan favourite. He's one of those players that does an amazing thing and then a gaff It's like, which
we
one are you
love
going to get?
that, don't we?
When
In
you get-
England, we
and
love that.
Gregor would have been cringing because he was celebrating every tackle like he just won the cup final.
Do you remember when he celebrated a tackle, I think against Man United when he was at Chelsea, but he gave the ball away directly to create the chance that he saved?
Yeah.
That was the peak.
Yeah.
That was too much.
An entertainer, some
I'm
might say.
finished with the sassy after that.
and he could. Well, I get your point, and he could have given away, and maybe should have given. I mean, he could have given away 2 penalties. So but on the other hand, he did give the Villa team this sense of personality and energy, and he's really eye-catching. And I don't even know where his best position is, because I think at fullback he does look exposed a lot, but he did. The fact that he didn't seem to care, this wasn't his best position, and he really went for it. I mean, maybe overall maybe when he calms down, he will be a great defender. Maybe he will. But I think for all his mistakes, I think he lent Villa a much needed sense of oomph in what was becoming a debilitating pattern for them.
Yeah, just thinking about Villa, and I was being mischievous about Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth, so I might as well do the same about Villa. And thinking about the end of the season, Gregor, last Thursday we were saying, great first leg win against Bruges, what a fantastic achievement it would be if they can get into the Champions League quarterfinals. But then there's that sense of, well, do we think they're going to win the Champions League? Probably not. So you then look at the league table with them having played 29 games, which is 2 more than Newcastle, who have played tonight, of course, but 1 more than everyone else. Brighton have got themselves back into the conversation as well. Are you starting to think that with these ambitions to sign people like Rashford and Asensio and things, that Villa, if they finish, I don't know, 8th, but go out of the Champions League, that's actually not a great season? Even if they Champions League quarter-final is fantastic,
It comes back to the reality that we were talking about of how hard it is to
sustain it,
step up. It was different when they were playing in the Conference League, because they just changed their whole 11 for Thursday night football. It's different, when you've got the best teams in Europe coming that you're facing on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and you've got to play your best team, and then you've got to recover and play in the Premier League. Newcastle have found the same.
I'm just
same
being
issue.
mischievous
So
to
no,
the
it
point that
wouldn't-
if they get through against Bruges, they go, right, quarterfinals, that's enough now, lads. Let's get back to
It's
the
a bit
league.
ridiculous, Tom.
You get back to the league because we need to finish 5th because we need Champions League again.
Yeah, but they're in the Champions League.
Yeah, but they won't be next season if unless they win
But
it.
they're in it now.
Yeah.
I never understand this thing.
I'm just saying this is what
teams are obsessed with
this-
getting in the Champions League, and even when they're in the Champions League, and they just say, actually, let's be in the Champions League again next season.
What's the
and
point in
forget
trying
the
to be
fact that we're in
obsessed
it.
to get in it if you're not going to do something when you're in it? Also, there's the idea that you can focus on one thing and not the other is ludicrous. It never happens unless it's a lesser competition, and the Champions League is not that. So it might not last long, the juggling act. It might be over soon, whether they like it or not. And if they finish 8th, it's still not a disastrous season. It's not. I mean, if they end up back in the Conference League, it would be a bit of a blow to their pride. But it's not going to be a straight trajectory. It's the same in Newcastle, and even it might not be an upward trajectory at all.
Well, they could
It's so
easily-
hard.
They could easily win the FA Cup. I mean, they've got Preston next. I mean, it could be an amazing season.
All things can be true, Gregor. Okay? All things can be true.
I do think that clubs in general probably have to kind of get used to this new reality, where actually the days of the kind of set and forget Big 4, even Big 6, are gone. And we had that thing for a while where it was sort of the top 3 was set, and then there was a challenge for 4th or whatever. But actually, I think clubs like Newcastle and Villa and Spurs, Chelsea for now,
Brighton, Bournemouth, there's loads of them.
Yeah, but even the ones who get in almost have to just square with the fact that maybe next season they won't get in. They're not going to get in every year because there is going to be a bit of a yo-yo between that set, and that financially, from a point of view of squad planning, everyone probably has to get on board with the fact that when you're in the Champions League, you have to kind of take advantage of it, because you might not be in it for another couple of years, because the way the calendar is now, it takes its toll on you, and therefore your chances of finishing in the top 4 or 5 are massively reduced when you're in it. So take advantage of it. It's the same in the Europa League. When you're in that competition, go for it, because the Premier League now is that there are no guarantees, are there, in terms of the top 6 and 7, and I think all these teams probably have to come to terms with the idea that that area between 3rd and 8th is now you can't guarantee anything financially or psychologically, and you have to take advantage when you're in those competitions. Otherwise, you might not be back for a while.
There's obviously a huge conversation about the spending rules and whether that's kind of shackling the teams who are really have great ambitions to break into that, break the hegemony. But I've said it before, the teams. It also means that teams can't buy your best players off you.
Yeah.
None of these teams are being pilfered. They can't.
Yep.
You know, City can't go out and buy all the best players in the Premier League. They can't afford to do it. No one can. So, and actually, no other team in Europe can. So you can still, you know, it might take longer, but you can build a squad, and you know, if you plan it well, you can over time do it. I think.
Yeah, it's perfectly teed us up for the rest of the season, guys. Where, as you say, Tom, getting excited about that battle between 3rd to 8th, which is what we're really having to get our teeth into as Liverpool walk away with the title. Guys, I just wanted to finish with a topic, because the theme of this show has been that we weren't particularly entertained by the football on offer this weekend, particularly around the Manchester United Arsenal being the big prime time 4 p.m. Sunday game. Everyone sits down, maybe got a little glass of wine, maybe have roast dinner, have a lovely time, watch some football, be entertained at the end of the weekend, and we were not. So I wanted to ask, what would your ideal matchup be? Prime time. Gregor's pulling a face that says, do not come to me first. I cannot for the life of me think of one. The reason for asking this off the back of the Villa question was that I think Villa of late could be one of the two teams, with particularly their new attacking talents. But maybe, Alison, you would say after Saturday's game, definitely not. Not if they've had a Champions League game in the week. Would you agree?
They're not going to be primetime fodder.
No.
No, I don't. I just don't think Villa are entertaining enough. My ideal primetime fodder
It'd be Liverpool against Liverpool.
No, I'm a sucker for teams that overachieve and have good coaching. So and I'm into Schadenfreude as well. So prime 4 p.m. fodder is someone like Brighton beating Man United, or Bournemouth beating Man United, or
That's anyone
beating Man United.
Fulham beating Man United.
Man United are not entertaining, though.
Well, but I get a lot of entertainment value out of watching a big club.
It feels like a very personal choice.
Struggling.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Right. Okay. That wasn't quite what I was asking. That's a different kind of entertainment, I would say.
No, I think a lot of people would find that entertaining.
Yes, I'm sure. I think they probably do. Tom?
I think you have to have Tottenham.
That's what I
You
mean.
have to have
Tottenham Bournemouth could easily be the game, couldn't it?
Because Spurs, you know,
It's calamity is entertaining.
but it always sets up a good game.
Depends
There
if
are
you like.
always
If you like
goals.
slapstick,
Yeah.
if you like torture, then you're Alison Rudd. You like kind of go for the big team being on the way down.
Like sadism.
Yeah. If you like slapstick, you got to go Ange, haven't you?
And then I think you'd have them away from home at maybe a team like Fulham. You know, like a sort of like a.
I thought.
Ooh, I've got that game.
Fulham
No.
Spurs.
I thought Fulham, but I
did
just
too,
don't know
yeah.
whether they're
They're quite
quite.
inconsistent. You don't know what
Yeah.
you're going to get.
But that's what we want, isn't it? We want unpredictability.
We want
clash of
entertainment,
styles.
Tom. Entertainment.
I think there are goals in that game.
Newcastle on their
they
day.
are, yeah.
Yeah.
Newcastle.
You've also got to think about the matchup. Yeah.
Come on then, I've given you an extra 2 minutes. I've
I
asked
think,
these two.
I think Bournemouth are one of the teams. I'm just not entirely sure how I want them to play. I would have said Forest, but I think there's too much like.
No, you can't have. The way you sold Forest earlier, I'm sorry, you can't be putting
No.
Forest at a
And
prime
they just
time.
smashed them 5-0, didn't they? So that's-
Forest are prime lunchtime on a Saturday.
I think Bournemouth Liverpool, because I think
Ooh, you know
Liverpool-
what that is? You know what that is? That is old Liverpool versus new Liverpool.
Oh my God, she's done it. How did she manage to do that?
But it is, isn't it?
Well, it's
watching
like-
Bournemouth
it's like-
is a bit like watching Klopp.
Oh, how you managed to bring Klopp into this?
yeah.
But it is
What-
true.
What it's like Liverpool aren't going to change the way they play, and Bournemouth are going to. They don't care who they're playing against. I think that's an entertaining game. It has been an entertaining game, and Liverpool come out on top. But I think that's probably my pick.
There you go. You got there in the end, despite grimacing all the way through that. We got some suggestions.
Well,
in the
Fulham
end.
play Spurs on Sunday, right? So if there's more than 5 goals, then I think
Yeah.
I win the argument.
And are you going to that game,
And
Alison?
I'm going to that game.
Great. So
Thank you for that, Tom.
Come back 1 week from today where Alison Rudd will have seen officially the most entertaining game in the Premier League. We'll see you then. Alison Rudd, Tom Allnutt and Gregor Upson, thank you very much for joining me on today's very entertaining game podcast. Thank you too for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. As I say, we'll be back on Thursday, and me and Gregor have got an EFL show this week as well. We'll see you then.